Welcome to Death, Lies, and Alibis. I'm your host, Christy, and this is the podcast that dives deep into the dark and eerie world of local cold cases. Today, we're in New Straitsville, a small, lovely town nestled in the heart of Ohio. Now, it's bustling with tight-knit neighborhoods and friendly faces, and a sense of security that you expect from any small town. But beneath the idyllic surface lies a hidden darkness, a collection of unanswered questions that have lingered over the years. So grab your headphones, lock your doors, and be prepared to enter a world where the truth has invaded everyone. Content warning. This episode contains discussion of homicide, domestic violence, and opioid use. Listener discretion is advised. The bleach hit first. Sharp, chemical. Wrong. No tape was stretched across the doorway. No cameras flashed. Just strangers scrubbing the floor where a daughter had died. If the autopsy called it homicide, why did the town whisper overdose? Before I tell you Amy's story, I need to take you somewhere most people just drive past, and that's New Straitsville, Ohio. It's a village of fewer than 800, tucked between the hills, coal dust baked into the bricks. Life moves slower there. Neighbors still borrow sugar, and porch lights glow where the late-night conversations and handshakes still mean something. Cole built that town, along with danger, pride, and the kind of work that leaves your hands scarred but your name respected. The past never really leaves here. It lingers, and stories told the same way for 50 years. Even the Moonshine Festival keeps that old pride alive, with parades and music and mason jars clinking under the streetlights. It's a place that loves what it is. But towns like this, they carry secrets, and when those secrets finally surface, they don't ripple. They split everything wide open. And on September 18th, 2017, the quiet broke. Amy Jo Nelson, 39 years old, a daughter and sister and a friend, found dead in her apartment. What happened next would test a family, shake a community, and leave one question echoing louder every year. If the truth is written in black and white, why does the cover-up still carry more weight? To understand what was stolen, you have to start with what she came from. Amy was the firstborn of Pam and Pete Nelson. They were high school sweethearts who never grew out of each other. They weren't just partners, they were a team. People admired them because they showed up for each other and for their kids and for their neighbors. Pete worked with his hands, oil fields first and then Goodyear. Pam was a nurse, the one who ran towards a siren instead of away. Hard work wasn't something they preached. It was in the air they breathed. Their home was a place where love wasn't just said, it was done. Where sisters weren't just siblings, they were each other's safe place. Amy and Abby, and later Allie, the foster child who became family in every way that mattered. And Amy, she was light. She had blonde hair, blue eyes that didn't look through you, they saw you. She was the kind of person who made a stranger feel like they've already pulled up a chair at her table. Abby remembers those days the way you remember a summer, bright, easy, and gone too fast. That's the real weight in Amy's story. Not the files, not the courtrooms. It's the roots, a family that loved her loud and held her tight. And it's that foundation that makes what happened next impossible to accept. At 14, Amy's world split in two. It happened on an ordinary day. A softball game, the sound of cheers, metal cleats biting into dirt. Then, without warning, she collapsed. The girl who always ran full speed suddenly couldn't stand. And then come hospitals, tests and more tests. Then came the words that would follow her for the rest of her life. APS syndrome and lupus. Two diagnoses, two indivisible wars inside of one young body. And from that moment on, her life became a rotation of white walls and fluorescent lights, IV pools and blood transfusions, and rooms that smelled like bleach and hope mixed together. Most people, they would have been crushed by it, but not Amy. She had something stronger than luck. She had will. She straightened her crown and she kept moving. Graduated from high school, studied nutrition at Hocking College. She made plans, because that's who she was, the kind of person who built a future even when her body kept trying to take it away. She never let her illness define her. And when people saw Amy, they didn't see her sickness. They saw light. They saw laughter, a laughter that filled a room and refused to fade. And her pain didn't own her story. Love did. Family did. Faith and better days did. That strength carried her through every surgery, every setback, and every night she thought she couldn't keep going. It's the same strength that makes this story so heartbreaking, because when the phone rang that morning, no amount of faith and no amount of fight could protect the Nelsons from what waited on the other end of that call. It started like any other morning, coffee cooling beside the sink, scrubs pressed and put on. Pam Nelson was now on another shift, just doing what she always did, showing up, helping, and keeping order in the chaos. Then her phone lit up. It was Amy. She smiled, that little flash of a warmth a mother gets when her daughter's name glows on the screen. She answered, expecting to hear, "Hey, Mom." But it wasn't Amy. It was her boyfriend's mother. And the words didn't make any sense at first, and they never do. Amy passed away in her sleep last night. Pam's knees gave out before her mind could catch up. Then more words, sharper this time, words that cut. She died because they took her pills away. Shock. Then numbness. And then pain so deep it hollered her out. She hit the floor. But she didn't stay there long, because that's not what mothers do. She called Pete and she called Abby. Then she grabbed her keys. The road from work to Amy's apartment was only 30 minutes, but that day, it stretched into forever. Those Perry County back roads twisted like they were taunting her. Sharp turns, blind corners, gravel whispering under the tires. Each curve came with a prayer. Each mile carried the same silent plea. Please, God, no. The radio was off. The only sound was her breath, shallow and breaking, and then the hum of the car pushing toward an answer she didn't want to find out. By the time she turned into Amy's street, the air itself felt wrong. It was too quiet, too still, like even the world knew what she was about to see. The Nelsons pulled up to Amy's apartment expecting silence. What they found was noise, buckets scraping across the tile, the hiss of mop water slushing, the sharp sting of bleach burning the air. Pam stopped in the doorway, frozen. She knew that smell. She'd spent years as a nurse. She knew what bleach did. It cleaned and it erased. Inside, people moved like they were doing chores, not mourning, not crying, just cleaning. There was no crime scene tape, no cameras, no evidence markers, just the sound of everything that mattered being scrubbed away. And out front, Pam saw Chief Andy Love, and beside him his nephew, Auxiliary Officer Zane Love. Two uniforms standing still while a crime scene disappeared behind them. She wanted to scream, "Stop!" but her body wouldn't move. And when they carried Amy out, Pam's eyes locked on her daughter's face. Bruises bloomed beneath her pale skin. Blood traced from a line from her nose to her mouth. And her hands, they were scraped and torn, looked like they had fought back. Pam saw it. Abby saw it. But the word floating through the air was overdose. Even the coroner raised an eyebrow, saying quietly that things didn't add up. Still, no protection of the scene, no photos to preserve the case, no sealed evidence bags, just bleach. The awful certainty that the truth was being washed down the drain. Days turned into weeks, and the Nelson waited, the way only a grieving family can wait, between calls that went nowhere and promises that faded like fog. They held on to one hope. The paperwork would tell the truth. And when it finally came, it did. There were no whispers in those pages, no rumors, no lies, and most importantly, no overdose. The autopsy said it plain. Cause of death was blunt force trauma, and the manner of death, homicide. Black and white, undeniable. Ink that spoke louder than any gossip could. But by the time those words hit Pam's hands, the damage was already done. The apartment had been scrubbed, The bleach had burned away what mattered most: fingerprints, fibers, proof. All of it gone. The witnesses or helpers had gone back to their routines. Hours had slipped into days, days slipped into silence. And what should have been a locked crime scene was treated like a mess to be erased. What was lost in those first hours can never be recovered. But paperwork doesn't forget, it leaves a trail. The official report told one story: murder, while the town clung to a lie. And that lie had already taken root. It sped faster than the truth, passed from porch to porch and Facebook post to Facebook post. Pam even remembers one officer telling them to let everyone think it was an overdose. That way the suspects won't get their story straight. Now, maybe that was strategy, or maybe it was an excuse, a way to bury their own mistakes. Because believe me, mistakes were made, big ones. And while law enforcement stayed quiet, the silence did what silence always does: it protects the killer. But the Nelsons didn't stop. They couldn't. They put up signs. They talked to reporters. They told anyone who would listen. Amy didn't pass in her sleep. She didn't trip and fall. She was murdered. But the system's answer wasn't action. It wasn't outrage. It was silence. And we all know that silence is a choice. Even the strongest hearts can wear thin under the wrong kind of love. In the months before Amy's death, one name kept surfacing. That's Jeremiah Jakey Boy Spears. People in town said Amy allegedly wasn't the same when he was around. Her laugh was quieter, her light was dimmer. The easy joy she carried her whole life began to fade, replaced by something tighter and heavier. There were whispers of control, whispers of drugs, whispers that he decided who she saw, where she went, and when she spoke. And the pattern was familiar, the kind that hides behind closed doors and fake apologies, the kind that starts small, then swallows everything. With isolation, there's a manipulation, domination. It's a playbook as old as abuse itself. Now, let me be clear. Everyone named here is presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Spears has not been charged in Amy's case. But even without formal charges, his name lingers in the air around the story like cigarette smoke. Thick, stubborn, impossible to ignore. Those who knew Amy said she tried to pull away, that she wanted out, that she was scared, but also stubborn, and she still believed she could fix things, still believed people could change. And that's who Amy was, the kind of woman who offered grace, even when the world didn't deserve it. But grace has its limits, and for Amy Jo Nelson, the darkness of her door was already inside. Names mean something in small towns. They echo through courthouse hallways and through gossip and memory, through the spaces where truth and rumor start to sound the same. And one name keeps coming back as Jeremiah Spears. Court records trace his story like a warning. Okay, in 2020, Spears was charged in Perry County with drug abuse, drug possession of instruments, and the outcome was only a fine, a warning. He got a slap on the wrist that barely made a ripple. And by 2021, he had escalated. He pled guilty to 4 counts of trafficking in heroin. Now, this wasn't just using. He was selling out there in your neighborhoods and pushing this, feeding the same epidemic that had already gutted towns like New Straitsville. Even behind bars, the chaos didn't stop. September 16, 2021, incident reports from the Southeastern Ohio Regional Jail described Spears and 8 others involved in what they called an aggravated riot. Now, we're not talking about a scuffle or an argument. This was a full-blown riot. The charges were vandalism, inducing panic, aggravated rioting. This is violent, volatile, but predictable. Would you want this back in your neighborhood? Because he is back on the same streets, back in the same shadows where Amy once lived. And when you line up this record beside the months before Amy's death, the picture does get dark. It's not just about what he did on paper. It's about the kind of presence he carried into a room and the damage that kind of energy leaves behind. Still, to this day, Spears has not been charged in connection with Amy's death. We did reach out for comment, of course. We have no response. The door's always open if he wants to speak. Because in a case this heavy with silence, every voice does matter. And the longer that silence stretches, the louder the questions become. Every story like this has its orbit. People who circle close to the truth and spend the rest of their lives trying to escape its gravity. For Amy, there's two people that are like that. One's her roommate, and the other's a friend who, well, by some accounts, allegedly says that she saw the violence up close. The roommate lived in an apartment, the same walls, the same floor where Amy's life ended. And because of that, she's been questioned more times than she can count by police, by reporters, and by podcasters. She said it feels like harassment now, that she's told her story until her throat went dry. She even took 3 lie detector tests and says she's passed them all. According to her, she wasn't there that night. She says she left Friday, come home Sunday after work, and went to bed, not knowing her roommate was already gone. Now, she does admit to cleaning, but she says it wasn't to hide evidence. It was that she was in shock, grief. She said she was just wanted to stay busy. And she blames law enforcement for the chaos that followed. She said they never treated it like a crime scene. And she insists she loved Amy, that Amy had nowhere else to go, and that she gave Amy a place to land. Okay, maybe that's true. Maybe she did what she could. But I don't think Amy would be this kind of friend to her. I mean, I think Amy would be braver and more loyal. And when Pam hears this version of events, she shakes her head because she agrees. The Amy Jo Nelson she raised wasn't the type to leave friends behind. She was the one who showed up, who fought, and who stayed for her loved ones. Okay, and now there's the friend. The friend who, according to some, allegedly witnessed the abuse. Her family says she's sober now and raising her kids, and she doesn't want to be dragged back into the past. They call the questions harassment also, so they want to be left alone. Now, let me be perfectly clear here. Justice isn't harassment. It's persistence. Because what's the real bother is a mother burying her daughter, a family carrying silence like a curse, and a town content to believe an easier lie. Amy didn't get a chance to turn her life around. She didn't get to make memories or heal from the hurt she carried. Her story was cut off mid-sentence. Now, we respect anyone's choice not to speak. That's their right. But I will never apologize for pushing the hard questions about Amy's murder, because y'all know Amy deserves better. And I will keep being a bother until justice is finally served. And if that makes people uncomfortable, it says more about them than me. What Amy was living through wasn't just pain. It was a system, one that took the root in every small town from here to the edge of the map, the opioid epidemic. Now, it didn't start in the streets. It started in offices, and ink pens and prescription pads, and white coats that promised relief and delivered addiction instead. For years, doctors handed out bottles like they were hope. Pharmacy filled scripts faster than anyone could question why. And people like Amy, the ones who actually hurt, were caught in the middle. Family pharmacy records show Amy received as many as 450 oxycodone tablets a month. 450. That's 15 a day. That was only one medicine. She was also on Oxycontin, methadone, clonazepam, and gabapentin. A cocktail meant to dull the pain, not destroy a person, but it did both. That was her treatment plan, until it wasn't. One day, the system that fed her cut her off. She went from 400 pills to 60. No tapering, no warning or support, education, just good luck. Now, anyone who's seen withdrawal up close, you know what comes next. The body screams. The mind unravels. The world shrinks down to the next pill you can't have. And in Amy's case, there was something else, a darker current underneath the surface. The Nelson family believes some of those prescriptions were trafficked and that her pain was being profited from. That meant when the supplies stopped, it wasn't just medicine that went missing. It was the money, the control, and the power. So when Pam heard those first words, she died because they took her pills away, it almost made sense. Almost. Until the coroner's report arrived, until the paper said what the whispers wouldn't: blunt force trauma and homicide. Amy didn't die from withdrawals. She didn't die from the loss of pills. She died from violence. But the pills, they set the stage. They made her vulnerable. They blurred the lines between pain, dependence, and control. Because in the wrong hands, those bottles weren't medicine at all. They were leverage. And that's the cruel truth about it. For Amy, addiction wasn't a label. It was a weapon used against her. What happened to Amy Jo Nelson isn't an isolated tragedy. It's what happens when a system meant to protect us decides it's easier to protect themselves. In towns like New Straitsville, everyone knows everyone. The chief of police knows the suspect's uncle. The officer on the scene grew up next door. The coroner drinks coffee with the mayor. And when a crime scene cuts too close to home, the lines get blurred. The badge becomes a shield, not just for justice, but for comfort. That's how cases die before they even start. Because when the chief walks into a death scene and calls it an overdose on site, before the photos, before the tape, before the evidence, you don't get an investigation. You get a story. And when BCI, the agency meant to step in when the local enforcement can't handle it, they get shut out of the room. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. Every choice like this costs something. The cost is the truth. The cost is trust. The cost is families like the Nelsons living year after year in the wreckage of other people's decisions. It's a pattern that stretches far beyond one apartment, from Perry County to every small town where politics and friendship outweigh accountability, where good old boys keep secrets and the silence keeps the peace. But peace built on silence isn't peace at all. It's rot. If no one rocks the boat, the water never clears. This isn't just about Amy Jo Nelson. It's about every woman whose bruises get ignored, every family told to move on, every truth lost because it made someone uncomfortable. Law enforcement failed to protect Amy. The system failed to seek justice for her. And every day that failure continues, it grows heavier. Pam Nelson didn't ask for revenge. She asked for answers, for fairness, for the same standard of care anyone deserves when their loved one is taken. Instead, she got silence. And like we said before, silence is a choice. Until someone in power decides to break it, families like the Nelsons will keep fighting battles they should have never had to fight. Because when the power protects itself instead of the people it serves, justice isn't blind, it's complicit. As we wrap up, remember Amy Jo Nelson's story. It doesn't end here. It ends when the truth finally does what it's meant to do, come into the light. Because Amy wasn't just a name in a report. She was a daughter who made her mom laugh until she cried. She was a sister who danced barefoot in the kitchen, a friend who gave more than she ever took. She was soft and stubborn, kind and fierce, the kind of woman who could survive pain, but shouldn't have to. And that's why we say her name out loud. Because when the world tried to erase her, her family refused to let it disappear. If you know something, say something. There's a $10,000 reward for information that leads to any arrest or conviction in Amy's case. $10,000. That's a lot of money for anybody right now. Enough to change a few things, to pay some bills, and to make a life it's a little easier. But more than that, it's a chance to do something right, to bring peace to a family that's carried this pain far too long. Call the Perry County Sheriff's Office. Call the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, because silence is what keeps stories like Amy's buried. What happened in that apartment isn't just a mystery. Listen, it's a mirror. It reflects every flaw in the system that lets power rewrite truth and then calls it closure. So remember, Amy Jo Nelson deserves the truth. Pam, Pete, Abby, and Allie, they deserve it too. And justice, I mean real justice, it starts with people who finally refuse to be controlled. So when the world grows quiet, and when the bleach smell fades, and the files start to gather dust, say her name again and again. Say it until the truth finally answers back. Amy Jo Nelson. Before I close, just a quick reminder, everyone named in this episode is innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. I'm not a lawyer, a detective, or a medical expert. I gather very public information. I present it to you for you to do your own research and form your own opinions. Death, Lies, and Alibis is for educational and entertainment purposes only. And that's it for this episode of Death, Lies, and Alibis. We hope that by shining a light on these local crimes, we have sparked something within you, our listeners, because the truth is, solving these cases will take more than just our words. It's going to require the dedication and collective efforts of the entire community. Don't forget to hit the follow button on the podcast so you'll never miss an episode. To learn more about how to get your case featured on the show, or to get instant access to case files and reports, plus documents and many free resources, go to our Facebook group, Death, Lies, and Alibis, and join today, or email us at deathliesalibis@gmail.com. As always, be safe, stay alert, and never stop seeking justice.